Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the Bellingham Public Works Public Safety Committee to order. Joining me on the committee is Roxanne Murphy and Jean Knutson. We have 3 items before us this morning, and so the first item is an ordinance of the City of Bellingham regarding the latecomers process, amending Chapter 14.02 and 2.56 of the Bellingham Municipal Code. Ted?
Thank you. Good morning. Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. The ordinance in front of the committee this morning does a few things as it relates to the latecomer process for financing public improvements. First off, what it does is takes the opportunity to amend our code to align it with recent changes in the state RCWs. In 2015, the legislature made some modifications to the utility portion of the latecomer RCWs to make them align better with the street improvement portion of the RCWs. Essentially, private developers have the ability and have always had the ability to construct public improvements, both utility and transportation improvements, identify an area of benefit, so the folks that will benefit directly from those improvements, and then pursue recovery of their costs through some proportionate share, whether it's frontage or square footage or number of units. There's several methods that are identified and approved in state law to do that. And they've always had that opportunity, as the city has also always had the opportunity to join in with private developers and participate in those improvements and the cost recovery portion of them. What was a little bit different is cities have had the opportunity to initiate on our own transportation improvements, identify the area of benefit, and be the sole recipient of the repayment of those improvements for those that benefit. And that's always been clear from a street improvement perspective. What was unclear was, could we do that from a utility perspective? What the legislature did in 2015 was clarified that, amended the state law, and said that cities can do the same with utilities. They can make the improvements, identify the area of benefit, make the improvements on our own initiative, and then be the sole recipient of the repayments for those improvements from those that connect and benefit. So the ordinance before the council today amends our code to make it align with state law. We also took the opportunity to clarify other sections of the latecomer code, make it a little bit easier for people to understand, clarify the process, including how the area of benefit is defined, what people's opportunity are to challenge or protest the area of benefit, and make that much clearer under state law. Do some other things in terms of clarifying the terms of repayment, which are a little bit different for street repayment on utility or on street latecomers. It's a 15-year repayment. For utilities, it's a 20-year repayment, meaning folks have that period of time to make their payment for use of those utilities. So we went through the code. There's a memo from the legal department in your packet that identifies each section of code, what it says, and what the modifications that are being made by the proposed ordinance to clarify the process. One other, I think, item of note you can see in the title of the agenda bill that we're making modifications or proposing modifications to both Title 14, which deals with the latecomer process, and Title 2, which deals with the hearing examiner. One of the changes is currently there's an opportunity to comment or protest on the assessment, the area of benefit that goes to the hearing examiner. The hearing examiner makes a ruling which comes to the city council. Currently the code says that the city council may have public comment, receive public comment. The modification in here to make it clearer and align with state law and other portions of our code is to say that the city council shall have public comment period. So if once the hearing examiner makes determination, finding of facts, come to the city council would then be required to have a public comment period for those folks within the area of benefit to come in and comment to the city council. So that's also clarified in the code. We're doing this today under the new process of bringing things forward, introducing it to the council, not asking for action today, but rather just information only. We would then come back at your next council meeting and request, if the council was in favor, that you approve at that time. So Matt Stamps is here. He helped greatly with this, put the memo together. Has a good understanding of not only our code but state laws it requires as it relates to this financing option. And then Chad Schulhauser, the city engineer, as well. So we're happy to answer questions that the committee may have.
Okay, Gene?
Have you received any emails or contact about this? Because to my knowledge, we haven't.
Yeah.
No, we really haven't. We're trying to be proactive on this one. We're looking down the line at some of our capital projects and just want to make sure that the city has done what we need to do in terms of modifications to the code to have this financing option available to us. From a private developer's perspective, although the changes are, I think, adding some clarity, doesn't significantly or really materially change anything from their perspective. The big change is allowing the city on our sole initiative to take advantage of this from a utility perspective. So we haven't had any conversation with developers about this.
Roxanne?
Well, I just like the flexibility that this provides, and then also, a little bit more fairness on either side of these courts. I was just curious if there are other municipalities that have followed a similar approach, so we might be able to convey that if people have concerns.
Yeah, I don't know firsthand. I don't know if Matt's talked to anyone, but certainly in working with MRSC, Municipal Research, this is something that all of the jurisdictions that we're aware of are, if they haven't already started pursuing this, will, because it really, as you mentioned, just provides some flexibility in financing and clarity. The latecomer process is, there's a lot of steps. It's very process heavy. It's a financing tool, but I think the nice thing about this is it does make it easier for developers as well as for city staff to look at the code and say, these are the steps that we need to take.
Okay. Anything else from committee? Yeah, I think pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So I don't see any problems, at least up here,
Okay.
our committee, when it comes back forward.
Great, thank you. We will schedule it for a future meeting then.
Okay. Okay, our next item is the complete network ordinance for multimodal transportation planning.
Thank you. The staff, as council was considering or is considering the update to the comprehensive plan, we touched on this component just briefly during the transportation element, talking about complete streets ordinance, or what we're calling a complete network approach to transportation planning. Recently, the Transportation Improvement Board, which receives its funding through the state fuel tax and through a process created by the state legislature, has created a new funding opportunity for jurisdictions that are compliant with this complete streets approach to transportation planning. Simply meaning that you're looking at your transportation system, you're planning, designing, and building to accommodate all appropriate modes on different sections of the network to make sure that we're providing the appropriate facilities. Not always the same facilities on every street, but making sure we're looking at a corridor, and if it's appropriate to have bike, ped, and transit, as well as single vehicles, we're doing that, and we're planning in that fashion. Bellingham is well positioned in this regard, really going back to the 2006 comprehensive plan. Although at that time it wasn't called complete streets, it certainly was the approach that Bellingham was taking at that time, and it's really been a tenet of our planning and construction since then. Chris Como, our transportation planner, has been working very closely with TIB, which is a valuable funding organization. We've been very successful working with TIB and completed a lot of great projects with their funding. Chris has been working with their executive director, making sure that we're compliant moving forward. We want to make sure that we do everything we need to do so that we are eligible for this new round of funding, which is a little bit different than a traditional grant application approach, where you have a project in mind, you apply to a grant that's looking at a certain set of criteria, and projects are scored against one another. In this particular program, jurisdictions that are compliant, where the councils have adopted a complete streets ordinance and are eligible for this funding, those jurisdictions are nominated by outside organizations that have been identified as nominating organizations that would, for instance, nominate the city of Bellingham because of what we do for certain types of infrastructure. And then our nomination would go to TIB. If awarded, you would receive up to $500,000, not necessarily for a specific project, but $500,000 that would go towards a project the jurisdiction feels is most appropriate. So there's a lot of flexibility in the funding, which is great. But to get that funding, we have to adopt the ordinance that's before you. As I mentioned, Chris introduced this briefly during the comprehensive plan. On this particular item, given the time sensitivity, we would request that council take action on the ordinance because the application process starts in September. We want to make sure we're eligible, and then TIB will make decisions in October. Chris is here. He's done a really nice job putting this together, and he'd be happy to answer any specific questions that you might have.
Yes, Roxanne?
Well, I must say that admit openly that I'm a Complete Streets and Complete Networks geek. One of the things that I love about Complete Networks is that I think it creates cost savings over time, and then certainly lessens the impact of construction on neighborhoods and businesses in any area where this work could occur. So I will be happy to recommend that we pass the ordinance for the Complete Networks for multimodal transportation planning.
Yes, Gene?
Yeah, on page 37, the chart, can you explain that, Chris? Because I've been asked a few times, is under this, are we rating it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or how explain? Because I'm getting, people are saying the chart's upside down because we've got 90 or 80% are single occupancy vehicles. So I'm just going to ask, what's the meaning of the chart?
So the graphic that you're referring to, the upside down triangle,
Yes.
is it's a graphic that's used throughout the transportation planning industry these days. This graphic happens to come directly from the Institute of Transportation
Yeah, we didn't
Engineers
write that.
Complete Streets Council. And it's something that's simply referencing the importance of looking at pedestrian safety when we do all of our projects. And the theory is if you design for the most vulnerable users, your streets will be as safe as possible. And it's not that we're not, we're trying to have a safe and efficient transportation system for all users, including private automobiles. Mm-hmm. But we also have to acknowledge that throughout our comprehensive plan, we've also committed to mode shift goals where we are trying to reduce single occupant vehicle trips and trying to boost the other non-motorized modes. And that's consistent with everything that we've done over the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And this was written by the American Planning Association.
Well, this is the publication that I provided to you, is just to show everybody that our particular policy approach is acknowledged throughout the United States as one of the leading approaches.
Okay.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank Chris for all the work over the years in multimodal design and things, because it doesn't seem like that many years ago, but it was quite a few, when the only thing we were able to consider when we were looking at street capacity and other things was bigger lanes and car lanes. And Chris has been involved with this from, this whole mode shift for us in designing some of those areas of getting to this point. So I want to acknowledge all the hard work that you've done and brought forward to make Bellingham a leader in this. And
thank you. I appreciate that. But I work with an awesome team of colleagues in Public Works.
But you're the face out front for me on this. So I want to make sure, I don't know, we don't always thank people for all the hard work, and some people don't know how much work's gone into some of these policies of getting us here. We get cited as being, leaders and stuff, but it is this teamwork and great works of staff that does this.
So, one other one.
Yep.
We have an opportunity to get a $500,000 grant.
Yes, and as Ted mentioned, the nominations are actually happening right now. Okay. That's why this is time sensitive. In fact, I believe some of the agencies have already been given the green light from TIB to go ahead and start considering agencies that they would like to nominate. I've been doing outreach to each one of these 10 agencies that's listed in the staff report, and TIB really considers Bellingham a poster child for this kind of thing, but we need to make sure that we get on those nomination lists.
Okay.
So we have a motion before us. Okay, we have a motion before us. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will recommend approval to the full council tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have one more item before us this morning. That's a bid award for the water treatment plant, a dissolved air flotation project.
Thank you.
Ed?
Thank you. This project is something that the city and city staff have been working on since about 2011, starting with a study looking at how to best deal with our water source from a water treatment perspective, and considering many different pretreatment options, looking at our intake facility. That initial feasibility study recommended that we pursue dissolved air flotation as a form of pretreatment at the water treatment plant. We piloted a smaller facility several years ago, and we're really pleased with the outcomes of the pilot, and since that time have been working on design of the pretreatment. Council has done a couple of awards already on equipment, so we did pre-construction award for some of the equipment associated with the pretreatment facility. And if council awards this project to the contractor, they will take on those previous awards. So the numbers that you see here, including from these contractors, include those previous awards of equipment that will be associated with this project. So we're happy that we're to this point and excited about moving forward. We received several bids on this project, and the lowest responsive and responsible bidder was Stellar J out of Woodland, Washington. I do want to mention that we did receive a protest from Hilco Contracting. Included in your packet is both our response to Hilco, Stellar J's response. We believe, after looking at the protest and considering it, both Public Works, our purchasing manager, city engineer, in consultation with the city attorney's office, we believe that council should reject the protest and award this project to Stellar J as the most responsive bidder. And we can go through the reasons for that, and I think it might be appropriate to do that. As I mentioned, we considered it very closely, and in our response to Hilco, we've identified the primary reasons why we believe that the protest should not be considered and should be rejected. The primary is, if you look at the bidding law, prime contractors have standing, are the contractors. Those that bid on the prime contract, the ones that were the general contractors, are those that have standing to protest. Hilco was a subcontractor, therefore we don't believe they have standing to protest. Nevertheless, we did want to consider the protest, and Stellar J did so as well, but we don't believe they have legal standing. But first of all, one of the items raised by Hilco is that Stellar J listed themselves as the subcontractor to perform mechanical and plumbing work on this project. As we noted in our response, that's certainly allowed under RCW, that a prime contractor can list themselves. It's not uncommon, and that's what Stellar J did. So that in itself is not a violation of bidding law. Another item that Stellar J raised is that, Hilco raised is that Stellar J doesn't have the expertise to perform the HVAC and plumbing work, and while that's not in itself a reason to protest, we did pursue that. Stellar J did respond to that and highlighted that they have extensive experience working on large water and wastewater treatment projects, including mechanical work, so they have responded to that. Another item that Hilco raised is that they were contacted by Stellar J to provide a number as a subcontractor for the mechanical and plumbing work, and yet Stellar J didn't put Hilco down, they put themselves down. There's certainly nothing wrong with doing that. It's not uncommon, and it's allowed that a prime may contact several subs asking them for a number for whatever reason, including the fact that they believe they can do the work more efficiently and less expensive than those subcontractors, they're certainly allowed to do the work themselves and list themselves as the subcontractor or the person that will be performing that work. So we believe we've reviewed it thoroughly. Matt is here, and certainly he can respond to any questions, and perhaps he may want to expand on what I've said here. But staff's recommendation is to award bid. Matt, would you like to add anything?
No, Matt Stamps, Legal Department. We did look at it closely with Public Works and the Purchasing Department as well, and agree, looked at this, and procedurally, we believe the subcontractor does in fact lack standing, and then on the substance, didn't see anything that was done in violation of the listing statute here for the reasons Ted mentioned.
Okay, Gene?
Funding, Ted, where's that coming from?
A mix of funding on this particular project. The largest component will come from what's called a state revolving fund through the Department of Health. It's actually federal money that comes through EPA, drinking water money. Very good terms in terms of repayment, usually about 60% of the rate you can get on the open bond market. So
Good.
cheap financing for the city. So that's the primary component, and we'll repay that with water rates. And that was included in the when we developed the rate structure. We did anticipate this, and so the rates do anticipate repayment of that debt. We have some remaining money from previous bond issuance for water and sewer projects, so that's money that needs to be spent. We'll be using that money as well, and some money just identified from the water rates as being used for infrastructure. So one thing I didn't mention is the price did come in quite a bit below our engineer's estimate, so we're happy with that and look forward to moving forward. This project, and maybe Chad can talk, since we're here, just a little bit about the construction schedule, because it's a significant project that will take some time to complete.
Sure. Chad Schlauser, Public Works. In anticipation of this award, notice to proceed, we would expect to be under contract probably end of September. We're looking at right now an April 2018 completion date, so a little under 2 years to complete this project.
My goodness, it takes that long, huh? Does it have any impact on traffic or anything? Not really?
It has a minor amount of impact on traffic in the park. We will be closing the trail through that section up to the treatment plant. But realistically speaking, the only traffic impacts will be at the intersection out on Lakeway Drive when large trucks are coming in, and Stellar J will need to provide a traffic control plan for that and a schedule updating everybody when they're going to be bringing in those loads.
Okay. Yes, Ted.
The one thing that Matt brought my attention to, and I do want to highlight, we did provide a recommended motion on this to incorporate the if the council agrees with staff's recommendation to on the protest and award bid. There's some language identified in the agenda bill there under recommended motion that might be helpful for tonight.
Okay. Yes. Roxanne?
Well, I am not a dissolved air geek yet, but I will be happy to move that we reject the bid protest submitted by Hillco Contracting Incorporated and award the bid to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Stellar J Corporation, for the water treatment plant dissolved air flotation project.
Got one more question. Since it looks like this bid is coming $2 million under the estimate, I love seeing that, but it sometimes makes me nervous and wondering about cost overruns. When they get into the building, what protection do we have against, this is actually going to cost us a lot more,
Regardless of the bid, we always look at every contract the same way, and every cost overrun, then whether it's via change order or a change of conditions, we would treat it the exact same way. It's not as if we're saying, we've got this $2 million pool of money sitting there. So we do look at that very closely, every change order, every change that comes through.
So just because it's at this price doesn't mean that that's necessarily the price that's going to come in at the end.
As with any contract, that's exactly the case, but
Yeah.
that's why we have all the bid items, and
Right.
we hold them to that.
Okay, I'm just curious, because this is I love seeing, $2 million, that's a big saving. Okay, we've got a motion before us. All those in favor, answer aye. Aye. Okay, we will recommend approval to the full council tonight, and I believe that is the end of committee. Oh, wait, before we go, I had talked with, since we got a little bit of time, I talked with Ted beforehand as we asking about an item that was brought up in this committee this past year, actually, about our fiber optic system and where Public Works is going to bring back a report, but they had to work with IT and stuff on some of it about bringing it back. And I just wanted to, since we got just a minute, about when you think, as you mentioned, that might be coming forward, and so when that will be happening.
Brian Heinrich, Mayor's Office.
Yes.
You might have seen an email from Michael Lilliquist over
Right, that's
over
what
the weekend.
reminded me that we'd already, made a motion, and we were told it was coming back. So that's why I talked to Ted, because this was already planned. But
I believe Michael intends to bring up an old new business to ask Mark Gardner to do some additional research. So I don't believe we've actually have an exact time, unless Ted has a.
No, we, excuse me, we talked, as I mentioned to Terry earlier, this is an issue that Public Works, along with the Information Technology Department and Economic Development, we've had quite a bit of discussion about this since the time that council did ask staff to take a look at it. From Public Works perspective, one of the things we've been doing is inventorying our fiber. We have, as I think you know, a pretty good system of fiber out in the right-of-way that was installed primarily to help us talk to our water and wastewater lift and pumping stations and traffic signals, and have really taken the opportunity anytime we do a capital project to put fiber in. The city also purchased a ring of fiber from the PUD many years ago, and so we've been inventorying what we have in the streets in terms of fiber capacity that we might have available. And unfortunately, that has taken some time because we never put it in with the intention of leasing the fiber or selling the fiber. It was really just making sure we had fiber available to interconnect our own systems. We've been working on that. The technology department has been working with leaders in the community through various groups, including the TAG, the Technical Alliance Group. Technology Alliance Group, sorry, to identify from the private industry what are the needs for fiber, which is a significant issue that at least should be looked at. And then from economic development perspective, are there needs for infrastructure that are impacting businesses' ability to either expand, or businesses that may want to come to the area that may be concerned about whether the technology exists. So that everyone's been working on their component. We spoke last week or 2 weeks ago and did at that time say we need to come back to council and provide where we're at. So as Brian had mentioned, we didn't have a date identified. My guess it would be within the next month or so. We would come back, say this is the work that the city's done, this is what we found out from various groups, and maybe what else is going on in the fiber arena. So apologize we haven't gotten anything back, but there has been some work that's been underway, and we will come back with a presentation here.
Yeah, good. I was just, I knew we did that, and I felt that there was a bunch of work already done, so we didn't duplicate. And while you were here, I wanted to make sure that was asked, so Mark was aware of that. And yes, Roxanne.
Well, on another topic, I just wanted to provide some feedback about something that I've been noticing that's really great in our community. It's just my sense that so many of the public works, streets, and utilities projects, that construction happens so quickly and the project is done so rapidly. And I just wanted to pass on my appreciation for that, and hopefully you could pass that on to the Public Works Department, because that helps our community in so many ways. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We will definitely let our folks know, and also the contractors that are doing a nice job for us. So thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? Then we are adjourned.